Our Paris-Dakar rally coverage is presented in association with Mitsubishi.
Paris, 6 o'clock on New Year's morning, and the New Year's revellers mingle with thousands of motorsport enthusiasts from all over the world, converging on the start of one of motorsport's legendary events, the Paris-Dakar Rally of 1993. It's the shortest Paris-Dakar ever at 8,877 kilometres, that's 5,500 miles in real money, the total distance, but it's still a long route through the desert from Morocco through Algeria and then Mauritania providing the final sting, and Citroën. A strong lineup for the Citroën team with Pierre Latigue and Michel Perrin heading that outfit, the team that won the Paris-Moscow-Beijing Rally of 1992. Ari Vatanen, don't forget, he is a 4 times Paris-Dakar winner. Hubert Auriol, a winner on 2 wheels. But we look at Ari Vatanen and look at that credential, the winner of the Paris-Dakar in 87, 89, 1990 and 91. The World Rally Champion also in 1981. Now lives in a farmhouse in Provence. Ari Vatanen, certainly one of the fastest drivers, but he too is going to have a very tough rally in order to stay ahead of his opposition. Also note for Ari Vatanen, a new co-driver, Christian Delferrier. He'll be partnering Vatanen on the road to Dakar. Pierre Latigue, he waves to the crowd before setting off from the podium. This is the opposition, the Mitsubishi Pajeros, 4 of the class T3 prototype vehicles. Kenjiro Shinazuka, the only Japanese to win a World Championship rally. Bruno Sabi, winner of the Monte Carlo rally, now on his 2nd Paris-Dakar raid, partnered by this man, Dominique Serriès. It's a big welcome from the crowd for the former French rally champion. He contested his first Paris to Africa rally last year on the Paris to Cape Town, and then went on to finish 3rd on the Paris-Beijing rally. When he's not rallying, he's actually a leading figure in developing tourism for his hometown of Grenoble. Well, Bruno Sabi then certainly a very popular man with the crowd in Paris. The cheers as he entered the podium, quite remarkable. But he also has some very strong teammates, not least Kenjiro Shinazuka and the European rally champion, the German driver, Erwin Weber. And this is Erwin Weber and his co-driver, Manfred Hiemer, arriving on the ramp to start the event. Runner-up on both the Paris-Cape Town and the Paris-Beijing rallies in 1992. Maybe they can make it one result better for 93. Also, buggies and prototypes in the event. Normally, not really opposition for the Citroën and Mitsubishi Works vehicles, but now they've got some strong backing from Renault and the Duc de Bourgogne supermarket chain. This one being driven solo by Jean-Louis Schlesser, the twice world sports car champion, ex-Williams Formula 1 driver. He's got 5,500 solo miles ahead of him. Among some of the other outsiders, for the first time in many years, we've got a British driver, Tony Fowkes and Unki Wang, and Jeff Tunnard and Peter O'Gorman driving 2 of the Kia Sportage vehicles. They've been prepared at High Wycombe in Buckinghamshire. This is Tony Fowkes and his Korean co-driver waving to the crowd. Could this Korean manufacturer be a big name in rally raiding in the future? Eddie Orioli, another of the front-running competitors, 1988 and 90, he won the Paris-Dakar on 2 wheels. This, in the Mercedes, is his first Dakar on 4. Another driver running solo, Giacomo Vismara in the Range Rover. It's been nearly 20 years now since a Range Rover won the Paris-Dakar. Maybe he can upturn the form book. And Etienne Smirlovici in the Mitsubishi PX33 starts his 11th Paris-Dakar rally. The car looks vintage, but it's got the running gear of one of the Pajero prototypes under the 1930s looking skin. It makes a fine sight as it heads through the streets of Paris. Let's have a look at the recent winners of the Paris-Dakar raid. Jackie Ickx, a former sports car world champion winner in '83, then René Mech, the man who went on to organise the Paris-Moscow-Beijing. Zanaroli with a Pajero taking the first Japanese victory in '85. René Mech with the Porsche following up. And we see the first of the bike competitors leaving the ramp. That's Stefan Peterhansel on the Yamaha YZE 850T. 27 years old, Peterhansel. This is his main opposition. That is Danny Laporte, the American former motocross and enduro champion, on his second attempt at the Paris-Dakar. Danny Laporte, very popular, now lives in France, and look at the crowds behind him as under the Eiffel Tower they set off to follow in the wheel tracks of Hubert Oriol, Gaston Raillet, Cyril Neveu, Eddie Orioli now on four wheels, Gilles Lallet, and of course Stefan Peterhansel. So ice-cold temperatures in Paris, in fact minus 6 degrees, but the spectators still remain as the trucks come to the starting line, led by Francesco Polini in that monster V8-powered Polini truck. So a chilly start to the opening action of the '93 Paris-Dakar, but this isn't a special stage. This is Pierre Lartigue on the road section onto Chalais and Burgundy for the prologue stage. It's a spaghetti bowl of a course, 3.5 kilometers, 2.2 miles long, and it has 38 corners. And the idea of the prologue is to set the starting positions for when the crews arrive in Africa. Well, the first to start, the two wheels, and it's Stefan Peterhansel, the favourite. And I can introduce now Richard Davies, enduro and motocross rider, and he's watching the action intently here on a hard-packed and frozen track.
Thank you. Yes, very cold track. Peterhansel taking it easy as he can. Oh, and Peterhansel seems to be, and he's out of fuel, would you believe it?
Now, is that a fuel starvation problem for Peterhansel, or is it a bit of gamesmanship? Because the Moroccan Sahara is pretty well unknown to these competitors, and if he stops on the stage like this, it could allow others to break the trail for him heading across the desert. But continuing problems, this is Andrea Azevedo, and he's in trouble.
Well, that's the ice for you. Gets it going one way. He doesn't want to change direction too quickly on machines this size, and straight off. Now, this man's actually surprised everybody. He won the prologue. He's just a Joe Schmo, you could say, an average rider from France. This is his moment of glory. He'll be leading them off into the deserts of Africa when they cross the Mediterranean. Very icy track, taking it very easy.
Well, Pierre Lartigue accelerating off the line, certainly setting the pace in the Citroën ZX Rally Raid. Jean Brucy on the Honda NX 650 Dominator, the fastest of the bikes on the prologue stage, and Lartigue set to set the pace and become the fastest car on the prologue stage. Lartigue taming the understeer, the tail slides wide, over 300 brake horsepower from these 2-litre Citroën ZX Rally Raids, and the only man to match Lartigue on the day was the flying Finn, Ari Vatanen. Vatanen setting an equal fastest time with his teammate Pierre Lartigue, meaning the Citroëns will start 1-2 in Africa. And this is Francisco Sande and Cristóvão Leito at the other end of the scale, a basically unmodified T1 production class UMM from Portugal. Very enthusiastic driving by Francisco Sande, but with 5,500 miles ahead of him, perhaps this wasn't the right approach. Sande's enthusiasm getting the better of him, the vehicle rolling, hitting the bank, heavy frontal damage, and out of the action with 5,498 miles still to go.
That's spectators for you. Got to put a show on for them.
But another man embarrassed here, Gérard Bourgoin, the man who is the mayor of Chalais, having to finish the stage on a tow rope after the buggy breaks its gearbox. Undaunted though, the generous mayor of Chalais, Gérard Bourgoin, organised a special reception, the final overnight halt in France before the crews head down to the quayside at Sète and then across the Mediterranean. The final chance for a hot buffet meal. There's Gilbert Sabine, the man behind this event now for almost 20 years, and many of the crews enjoying the fine wine of the Burgundy area before they take to the road again, heading from the heart of France to the Mediterranean coast. Cold weather, still below zero, and that means a very long, hard and cold ride for the bikers.
Yeah, I don't envy them this one at all. Cold hands, cold face, cold feet, and for what? All you're heading for is for a ferry. I guess they'd be glad to get this over with, get on the ferry, and hopefully get to the warmth of Africa.
Well, likewise for the cars. Most of these cars are designed for the desert. They're not fitted with heaters, and it really means an uncomfortable ride through France. But this is the French Riviera, the small port of Sète, and the locals look on in mystification as some 157 vehicles arrive to board the ferry, which is going to take them to Tangiers. Ari Vatanen heading through the crowds, the Citroën truck boarding the Danish ship the Neusberg, and as the crews fly to Agadir, the cars travel by ship, and delays loading the cars meant a long wait for the crews in Morocco. That meant a night arrival in the town of Fez and just a few short hours sleep before the competitors make their first contact with the desert. For that action, join us after the break. And welcome back to part 2 of our review of Paris-Dakar 1993, and it's an early start at Fez in Morocco for Ari Vatanen, for Hubert Auriol, for Stefan Peterhansel and for Thierry Charbonnier as they take their sustenance before the first timed special stage to Beni Unif, close to the Algerian border.
That's Jean Brucy taking off. This looks like Stefan Peterhansel on the road, and it's very cold there, which is exactly as it was in France, so these boys will be wrapped up fairly well against the elements. So quite a nice track to start off with. Sun in the eyes, which is a bit of a problem, a few spectators, but they'll just be finding their way, getting back into the swing of riding in sand again. Peterhansel, possibly the best rally raid rider of all time, I think.
Yeah, in actual fact, you can see how cold it is here, high in the Atlas Mountains, with Jordi Akerons in hot pursuit of Stefan Peterhansel. The water actually freezing to ice there in the ruts of the track. And Jordi Akerons continuing to press on across the desert. I mean, just how powerful are these rally raid bikes?
Well, they'll stretch your arms a fair way. This is Daniel Laporte. He's on a YZ850T, which is a two-cylinder Yamaha. It chucks out about 100 brake, maybe a little bit more. It's got to have that for the weight they carry, but a fairly large machine to get around. They actually handle fairly well in these kind of conditions.
But problems for Daniel Laporte at the end of the very first special stage. He got lost, and as he tried to turn around, the bike fell on his hand. It's a suspected broken bone in his hand. Laporte in a great deal of pain. The question is, can he carry on?
Non, c'est mort, mais I can't. Quand they touch. Yeah, exactly.
Well, the injury turned out to be a broken scaphoid bone, which put him back on the plane home. So the second day in the desert, and the rally starts without one of the bike favourites. Well, on 2 wheels. The drama on 4 wheels, though. This was the man setting the pace. Erwin Weber in the Mitsubishi Pajero T3 prototype started in 4th place after the prologue stage, but was fastest on special stage 1 and head the field onto the long desert section on day 7. Weber later said he drove fast, but he wasn't really attacking. He said the car was perfect, no problems with visibility, no dust problems. He said he wasn't too sure whether he was looking forward to starting that long navigation stage the following day, because he hasn't got that much experience. But there again, he is a European rally champion. He's very experienced at maintaining a steady pace without too much pressure on the car, and that, on this sort of event, is where Erwin Weber could score. Don't forget, on the Paris, Moscow, Beijing, he finished in a fine 2nd place. With Manfred Hiemer beside him, monitoring the satellite navigation system, he really could well be on the pace. Bruno Sabi catching one of the bikes on his way to finishing 2nd on this, the first special stage, 1 minute 23 seconds behind Erwin Weber. His role was to make sure that he didn't damage the car too much, so he drove steadily. He said he caught up with the Citroëns, which was nice, but he preferred to start the rally tomorrow in 2nd. Ari Vatanen started 2nd and finished 3rd. Vatanen later complaining how stony the track was and suffered a puncture, losing him 4 minutes. Ari, though philosophical, he said, that's this rally, that's life. dropping down from the snow-capped Atlas Mountains now into the true desert scenery. Ari Vatanen very much at home in these conditions, just as he's also at home on the World Championship Rally circuit. Straight from the Paris-Dakar, Vatanen has just a week of rest before he starts testing and training for the Swedish rally in the frozen north. You couldn't have a greater contrast between the two events. Ari Vatanen's Citroën ZX Rally Raid trailing the dust as he heads down the tracks. These tracks still very firm and very fast in comparison with some of the rockier tracks as they hit the desert. There you can see some of those rocks that cause so many tyre problems. This is Hubert Auriol, the African, brought up in Ethiopia, spends more time in Africa than he does in his native France. Despite that, runs a superb restaurant in Paris. And Auriol, another former bike winner of the Paris-Dakar, now very effectively making the transition to four wheels. Pierre Latigue, winner of the Paris-Moscow-Beijing event, certainly one of Citroën's front runners, started first after winning the prologue stage, but was taking it steady today, finishing in 5th. And again, the variety in the terrain as the cars descend from the mountain trails, now starting to reach the first sand, which starts to indicate the first of the desert. Kenjiro Shinazuka playing himself in very gently indeed, started today's event in 8th place, finishing 6th on the leaderboard, the ideal position to make his attack as the rally goes on. Don't forget these very early stages, but the pace already frantic. Shinazuka with his tracking helicopter really ensuring the car perfectly set up for the corners, making a spectacular sight as he heads down the valley. And again, that helicopter giving us the TV pictures with some very spectacular flying. Ken Shinazuka, armfuls of opposite lock, showing just how hard everybody's trying, even in these very early stages. Timo Salonen, another of the Flying Finns, another former World Rally champion, initially with Peugeot, now with the Citroën ZX Rally Raid. Suffered a burned-out car on the Paris-Moscow-Beijing, but aiming for a much better result with his Irish co-driver Fred Gallagher in the right-hand seat, passing one of the bikes. The bikes all start off ahead of the cars, but such is the pace of the cars that they're passing them halfway down the first stage.
Always looks a little hairy to me being overtaken by a car going that quickly on a narrow track.
It certainly is. I think I know some of the bike competitors complained at one or two of the four-wheel competitors getting quite so close to them. Jean-Pierre Fontenay in his Mitsubishi Pajero T3. Now, this isn't one of the pure race cars. This vehicle carries some 200 kilos of extra emergency spare parts. They allow him to be a fast support vehicle. If any of the other Pajeros have a problem, Fontenay will stop and try and remedy whatever the problem is. Notice also the big aerial on his roof. That is an extended satellite navigation aerial that allows the satellite nav to continue to work in case he's carrying additional tyres on the roof of the vehicle. Alain Ambrosino in the Citroën ZX Rally Raid 214, he's doing basically the same sort of job, a fast support vehicle with additional shock absorbers to take them on this long route. Day 6 taking the cruise from Morocco into Algeria, an 1,104 kilometre route from Beni Unif to El Galia, 741 kilometres of special stage, 451 for the bikes, through some daunting sand dunes, the second longest special stage of the event, and this is where the rally starts in earnest.
And the sand dunes are an absolute nightmare. I mean, they scare me just looking at them. You have to keep your pace up, keep the momentum going, just try and grab as high a gear as you can so you don't sink into this sand. It's worse than mud. When you're in it, that's it, you're stuck. He seems to be doing fairly well. They won't follow each other's lines exactly. This is number 24, Thierry Charbonnet. Sorry, I beg your pardon, it's Avi Reba and his K2 850. Somebody's already stuck. That's Charbonnet is stuck. That's one of the Yamaha, the Team Yamaha people. Different sponsors, but Yamaha want all their riders to do well. Trying to blast his way out of that sand. well and truly stuck.
And of course,
Plenty.
these bikes, very heavy machines as well. They're carrying an awful lot of fuel.
Well, it's funny, you manage to try and save as much weight with the cycle parts that you can, then pack it all back on, pack the pounds back on with fuel tanks. That's Peter Hansel. It should be an exhibition ride of how to ride sand.
Stefan Peter Hansel picking his way through those sand dunes absolutely perfectly. They're catching now Erwin Weber in the Mitsubishi Pajero. The bike now getting its revenge on the car, trying to find a way past, trying to avoid the dust from the Mitsubishi. And look at that big slide there from Stefan Peter Hansel, keeping it all together though, finding a route past at last. A big, impressive jump over the dunes. Stefan Peter Hansel now ahead, not having to eat the sand, but very spectacular riding.
I love shots like that. I mean, it shows what a bike can do, doesn't it? I mean, who needs four wheels? Here we are, Mr. Debussier. That's a Honda Dominator, or a derivative of, and he's well and truly stuck.
And a bigger problem there also, fuel leaking out of the back from one of the additional fuel tanks on the back of the bike. But that bike very firmly embedded in the sand. I mean, what can you do in those situations?
Well, here's our friend Reba on his K2 850. That's just a case of a bit too much speed. Body weight was wrong, down he went. And another one, exactly the same place. When you're stuck, to be honest, you're stuck. You just try and free the back wheel, get the weight off, push it. The amount of strength it takes, I mean, that's a DR350 Suzuki. That's a lightweight machine as well.
Well, Marianne Bernard having a big problem there, one of the two lady riders in this year's event. And you can see there another big problem. Those sand dunes are effectively blind for the cars coming up. Even the big trucks can't see you until they're on top of you. And in actual fact, Roland Heubecker on this stage was actually hit by a car, had to be airlifted to El Galia for hospital treatment. But for Marianne Bernard, now the agony of trying to restart the bike. Don't forget wearing heavy clothes. She gets the bike going at last, but this is the agony of the desert. The progress made in 25-yard leaps, and then the digging and the lifting has to start again. But the overnight leader, after one of the toughest early stages in the history of the Paris-Dakar, Erwin Weber, starting the stage, heading off into that amazing terrain of sand dunes. He was only set to complete this stage in 10th place. Bruno Sabi started the day in 2nd place, but the day went well for him. Sabi was to end up the rally leader at the end of the 2nd day in the desert. Day 6 of the event, and this special stage really sorting the men from the boys. Chance to accelerate across the wide open spaces, but even then reaching almost 120 miles an hour. You've got to watch out for areas like this, broken terrain. Ari Vatanen again cutting it very fine, passing one of the bikes there, determined not to risk the car by going too far off the track. He was the best Citroën on the previous night, starting the day in 3rd place.
In a case like that, the bike won't even know the car's there till it's alongside them. The concentration goes. You have to work hard to keep it upright.
Well, Bruno Sabi heading for stage victory and the rally lead. Ari Vatanen also heading on through the desert. But this terrain proving very tough indeed. Bruno Sabi having also to cope with a failure in the satellite navigation system. His co-driver Dominique Serrier's dead reckoning his navigation through these twists and turns through the dunes on a compass bearing and some mathematics in the cockpit of the Pajero.
I don't know what you take your bearings on. It all looks the same to me. Quite incredible terrain. I'd be gawping at the terrain too much to ride a bike, I think.
There you see that absolutely amazing terrain. The soft sand, known as fesh to the locals. It's proving a very tough route indeed. You see the Mitsubishi, the Citroën suddenly switch direction. They head off to the left of our screens, desperately trying to find a way through. Hubert Auriol, one of the experts on African rally, he too having to pick his way carefully, not only through the dunes, but also past the bikes, including Stefan Peter Hansel, the bike leader, trapped on the top of one of those sand dunes. This stage really proving one of the toughest of the event. Erwin Weber heading on across the sand. More action coming up. Join us after the break. Welcome back to part 3 of our review of the 1993 Paris-Dakar Rally Raid. This is the 6th of January, the 6th day of the event, and the long special stage from Beni Unif to El Ghalia in Algeria, the second longest stage of the event at some 790 kilometers long. Hubert Auriol, now his teammate Pierre Lartigue, being given some quick instruction in the cockpit of the car on the right route into the checkpoint at the end of the stage. Ari Vatanen heads across as the sand turns to scrubland, and he arrives at one of the passage controls on these very long special stages. The theory is you can head where you like, but there will be 3 passage controls at pre-designated points along the route. You have to check in at those. It's for safety. It ensures competitors will not get too far off the rally route in case they need recovering in the event of an accident or incident. If you miss those checkpoints, there is an 8-hour penalty added to your time. Bruno Sabi safely through the checkpoint. Now Pierre Lartigue climbs back aboard, having stretched his legs, and the Citroën ZX Rally Raid heads off towards the next checkpoint. But he didn't get far. Pierre Lartigue having his 4th puncture of the special stage. Lartigue and Michel Perrin, his co-driver, by this point have now got a tyre change down to taking them less than 3 minutes. But there you can see the difficulty, still carrying damaged wheels, now making a stockpile in the desert adjacent to one of the checkpoints. Pierre Lartigue saying that he's leaving the tyres for the support truck to pick up when it comes through the checkpoint too. And the competitors actually on this long stage reaching the point where they use so many tyres they have to wait for the support truck to reach them to give them some more. More problems though. This is Erwin Weber and Manfred Hiemer repairing damaged bodywork, and you can see the remains of their tyre having flailed at something over 100 miles an hour after it had failed. Kenjiro Shinozuka also joining in the tyre change competition as the sharp rocks tear the rubber to shreds. And another damaged wheel left to be recovered officially by the service crews in the desert. But of course the locals have some different ideas. If you're ever in Algeria and you see some taxis on some very flashy wheels, this is how they got them.
That'll go well on my Mercedes. I don't know quite what teams will say about that, and it's a couple of £100 worth of wheel there.
Well, there's a big dent in the wheel rim, but I'm sure it'll serve some useful purpose and make him a few bob down the souk. But bigger problems for Eddie Orioli in the Mercedes. 6 litres of V8 power unable to get him through the sand dunes. Young Nemoto in the Nissan Terrano heads on his way, not being antisocial by refusing to stop, but if Nemoto were to try and stop at that point, the chances are he would sink too. Etienne Smirlovici, the very experienced man in that vintage-looking Mitsubishi PX33 prototype, there with his co-driver Charles Kuipers having directed him, having now to run to help him. Now this could be the man who'll help Orioli. This is Maurizio Traglio, another of the Mercedes drivers, and circling now to try and find a safe stopping place to help his teammate. You notice how he's keeping his speed up so the vehicle doesn't sink in. He'll only slow down when he knows there's somewhere safe that his vehicle won't sink in. Well, it's a far cry from Eddie Orioli's 1988 and 1990 bike victories on the Cagiva. Meanwhile, the Morrow brothers, the 1983 winners, get a push from Etienne Smirlovici. And Smirlovici's looking a little worried because reversing with no rear visibility right towards the PX33. But plenty of other drivers also in trouble. Philippe Alliot, another former Formula One driver, he also very firmly stuck. The Morrows have got going again, the 2 brothers, still very much clubmen who have contested every event since the 1980s. Their 2-wheel drive buggy picks its way across the sand. But Philippe Alliot still stuck and destined for retirement on the 2nd special stage after going out over the time limit.
And that's a very stuck buggy.
Yes, the weight at the very back of the buggy ensuring that it stays nose high, and even the big heavy trucks with some 12 tons of momentum, 300 plus brake horsepower and 4-wheel drive, even they're not invincible.
You can look at the tyre pressure on the front of that truck. They're virtually running flat. Anything to get grip.
Difficulty, of course, if you run the tyres almost flat to get the maximum tread area. When you hit rocks like this, then you've got big problems with the danger of punctures. And even with 6-wheel drive, Jean-Yves Gaultier struggles to make it to the top. Again, you can see those tyres, as Richard said, running at a very low pressure. Well, Tsutsuma Matsumo, a slightly more spectacular approach to climbing the hill. Claude Brubach, another vehicle to hit that soft sand, and chaos in the desert with over 2/3 of the entry stuck in the sand as night falls.
Parts of this desert, the most we've never seen a vehicle before, and they've got 20 all at once.
Well, in actual fact, a very worried service crew at El Galia. Bruno Sabi, the first competitor into El Galia.
Bruno, journée de folie aujourd'hui?
He's saying that a very tough day, very long day behind the wheel, added to which the pressure of the satellite navigation system not working. Bruno Sabi very relieved to arrive at all, let alone in the rally lead. Second into the control, 1 hour 26 minutes. Behind Bruno Sabi is Pierre Latigue. No fewer than 5 punctures on today's special stage for Pierre Latigue. And exhaustion the keynote among all the competitors. Stefan Pederhansel arrives the current bike leader, and again his body language says it all: exhaustion.
You just have to look in his eyes, and the man is absolutely shattered.
But the marshals warm up by a campfire as they await the competitors. 3 bikes, 6 trucks and 15 cars into our control. He said, where are the others?
That's quite terrifying. They're all still out trying to cope with those sand dunes.
Well, also the dangers of driving in the dark on the sand dunes mean that it is effectively impossible to continue through the dark. They have to bivouac overnight and then attempt to make it at daybreak. Coffee for those lucky crews that did make it. Gilbert Sabine announcing the cancellation of the stage. The competitors travelling to the next stage at Bourg-au-Madris as a 653-kilometre liaison section. And any competitors arriving at El Galia by 5:30 this day will stay in the rally. Etienne Smirlevici overnight in the desert. His first words as he arrives, 32nd overall, he said, am I still in? His comment, in 11 years of Paris-Dakar, there's been no hell like this. 24 hours at the wheel without sleeping. This is the liaison section for the lucky ones. Erwin Weber, Hubert Auriol, a chance to wave and smile at the helicopter in the Citroën ZX Rally Raid. Down the road to from El Galia to Bourg-au-Madris in the desert. They're followed by Bruno Sabi in the Mitsubishi Pajero. The rally leader, his co-driver Dominique Serrier, managed to wave at the helicopter through the plexiglass side window as we trace the route from El Galia to Bourg-au-Madris, and then another long special stage, 550 kilometers long, to Tamanrasset. Timo Salonen at the stage start, prepares for the countdown. 11 kilometers of liaison section, then 550 kilometers of timed special stage, followed by another 174 kilometers of liaison, takes them into the town of Tamanrasset. A relaxed Kenjiro Shinazuka, big smile on his face. Gets the thumbs up from the marshal. The Mitsubishi Pajero heads off the line to start day 8.
Local very unimpressed with what's going on.
Hubert Auriol, Salvador Servia, the Spanish driver in the Lada Samara, but listen to that exhaust note, it's definitely something special. Porsche-powered Lada to Hubert Auriol, again very relaxed indeed in the Citroën ZX Rally Raid. But one of the stories of day 7 of the rally, the arrival of this beast in 8th place overall, Francesco Polini's monster truck climbing into the top 10.
That terrifies me, that thing.
Erwin Weber, then the second of the Polini trucks. Jacques Hussard in 10th place overall, so 2 of the Polini trucks in that top 10 results in the overall reckoning. Alain Ambrosino gets timed out of the control and sets off on the route. Behind him, Alphonse Cherny, 18th overall, second in the T2 category. It's his first Paris-Dakar, although he's completed in the Faroes Rally 4 times. Ari Vatanen behind him also prepares for the start. And this is the flat terrain on the road from Bourg-au-Madris to Tamanrasset.
This is Stefan Peter-Hansel, absolutely flat out, ringing it out in 6th. And the frightening part about this is you can't see any of the drops, the bumps. The desert being so featureless, it doesn't give off shadows when the sunlight's above you and so bright. So as soon as you're on something, you're past it again. So there's no let up, out of the saddle, in the saddle, out of the saddle. You can see both wheels off the ground there, and leaving our helicopter for dead.
There again, Peter-Hansel demonstrating his smooth riding style in comparison to a very hard charging Thierry Charbonnier.
Now this man is on the charge. Charbonnier and the late Gilles Lelay, they really spearheaded the resurgence of French off-road riding, especially in enduros. In the 80s they were unbeatable, and suspension's working hard. Charbonnier pushing as hard as he can in these conditions, really flying over 100 miles an hour, which is quite frightening. Out of the saddle, sees something in front, lifts the front wheel into a little depression, back down, back on the throttle again. There
it's Clever Kolberg, the Brazilian rider, on another of the Yamaha machines, and flat out at over 220 kilometers an hour, Ari Vatanen on the rev limiter in 6th gear.
These cars, the engineering that goes into them is fantastic.
Well, a chance to see some of that engineering. A puncture now for Vatanen and Christian Delferrier, another crew that could almost do a Formula One style pit stop. They've now become so accomplished at changing these wheels, only losing 3 minutes with this stoppage. And despite losing those 3 minutes, Ari Vatanen averaged 154 kilometers an hour, 95 miles an hour, including this stoppage from start to finish.
They're not quite your quick fit fitters, are they? A little bit more special than that. Engine ticking over all the time.
So the crew climb back aboard.
Okay, get in. Okay, à Dakar.
Ari Vatanen says okay to Dakar, and away he goes, keeping the engine running all the time. The reason for that is critical with a turbocharged engine. If you shut the engine down, the oil can boil in the turbocharger, and the last thing you want in the desert is a blown turbo and an engine that won't restart. Ari Vatanen went on, despite that puncture, to win the stage by 1 minute and 6 seconds from this man, Kenjiro Shinozuka. Shino, winner of the Ivory Coast Rally for 2 successive years, the only Japanese to win a World Championship rally. And Shinozuka charging very hard to match the Citroën ZX Rally Raid. 2nd on this special stage, 4th overall. And Shino's co-driver Henri Magna, later complimented by Ari Vatanen, he said, on the standard of the navigation. Bruno Sabi, content to cruise home 3rd place on this special stage. That further increased his rally lead. While 4th stage was the fight back for the German driver Erwin Weber. Weber disappointed with his performance on the 2nd long stage on the run from Beni Unif to El Galia, but now from El Galia to Borj Omar Driss and then on to Taman Rasset, Erwin Weber staging his fight back, climbing from 10th to 7th overall. Pierre Lartigue, again maintaining a steady pace in the Citroën ZX Rally Raid. The wily Lartigue heading for 5th on the special stage, but that consistent timekeeping taking him to 2nd place overall. And absolutely flat out at almost 130 miles an hour. It almost looks like a land speed record attempt, but this is the Paris-Dakar, and Pierre Lartigue and Timo Salonen heading across the desert absolutely flat out. And a big jump for Salvador Servia, 10th on this special stage, heading for 6th place overall, the man who could well split the battle between the Citroëns and the Mitsubishis. And listen to that flat 6 exhaust note, the car effectively a Porsche 959 with a Lada body.
Well, you won't get one of them at your local Lada dealer.
Servia spectacular as ever. And the leading two-wheel drive vehicle, Jean-Louis Schlesser, running 15th overall, and despite his body damage, continuing on the road to Tamanrasset. More action coming up. Join us after the break. And welcome back as the dust trail heralds the longest day of the Paris-Dakar 1993. Day 9, 1,192 kilometres from Tamanrasset to Adrar in the heart of Algeria. And flat out across the wide open spaces, Jordi Arcaron's fastest today, but 8 hours of penalty for missing one of those passage controls on special stage 2 has dropped him right down the leaderboard. He's fighting back to get to 11th overall.
And it's in this soft sand when you've really got to keep aggressive. You have to keep accelerating. If you are going to brake, you have to do it very deliberately. You can't roll the throttle off. You just keep going all the time, flat out, and that's an incredible shot.
The trail taking the riders as you can follow the dust cloud down from 1,300 meters up in the Hogar Mountains. Almost zero temperatures even here in the heart of Africa through the night, and then dropping down onto the plateau and into the desert where the temperatures are over 130 degrees as they head into the midday sun.
It's this type of going where you're really going to get punctures, where you're going from sand to rock, sand to rock. And this is Thierry Charbonnier, second overall now, and he's actually picked some insurance up from a pharmaceutical company. Let's hope he won't be needing their products at any time during this event. With the helicopter hovering above him, it's almost like a guardian angel with rotor blades, making sure he's safe, making sure if he does crash there's people there straight away. Lifts the front wheel over a small gully. He's doing about 85-90 mile an hour, slows down a tad, his feet up. And that, it almost looks like the moon, doesn't it? Flat out.
And Thierry Charbonnier, in actual fact, a private entrant, actually coming up now to pass the Works Yamaha 850. Charbonnier, as you say, sponsored by pharmaceuticals and an insurance company. Stefan Peterhansel, though, content to cruise at about 80-85 miles an hour, if you can call that cruising. There you can see his rolling road map up in the top of the fairing. It's basically a roll of paper advancing geared to the speedometer to show where he is along his route. Down below you see him there resetting the satellite navigation system, giving him his coordinates to within 15 feet. Tiny satellite navigation systems can be carried in a pocket. Every competitor's using them. This is the checkpoint they're heading for, an old French colonial fort, complete with a hand-driven petrol pump, or used to be, just outside the fort walls. A sign of the old days of Beaugest and the French Foreign Legion, but an isolated place for the marshals at the end of the stage. Well, this is the end of the special stage for the bikes, 493 kilometers from Tamanrasset. The bikes then progress via a liaison section, and as Jordi Arcaron's and Thierry Charbonnier arrive, a chance for the bikers to slow down and reflect.
You can see how cold it is, where they're using handlebar muffs, looking for his card. There's a hole in his sleeve there by the looks of it. I don't think that's too clever. If you lose that card, that's the end of the event, and you don't want to have done 9 days and drop out just because you've lost a piece of paper. These handlebar muffs will also be a bit of protection in case they hit any brush. You don't want to break a finger on anything. You can see when they stop that actually it's one of the more difficult parts. This is Peter Hansel arriving. As they slow down, you can see how soft this sand is. Bike becomes a little unstable, and that's when the weight starts to really become apparent. And let's hope it doesn't fall off its side stand, Mr. Charbonnier.
Well, Thierry Charbonnier, Jordi Arcaron and Stefan Peterhansel all now almost riding as a team. And it's interesting to note, Charbonnier, although he's a privateer, has almost become an unofficial member of the Yamaha Works team, now in the absence of Danny Laporte. But problems for Andre de Azevedo.
Yep, it's puncture time. Undo the rim locks. Oh, it's a nightmare. Doesn't care about the bike, that's just laid down. Stop, help me. I need a pump, help.
Well, waving down Gilbert Vecino in one of the Mitsubishi support trucks, and of course one of the best things about a truck is it has an air braking system, and when you've got a puncture and you need to reinflate your tyre, the best thing you can do is tap an airline into the air pump on the truck and pump up the tyre. That's what Azevedo did. It dropped him down the running order, but he is still going strong. Agustin Fernandez on the 650cc Suzuki, 6th on today's special stage, a very strong 5th overall. Patrick Siriol in that distinctive bike, he really, well, that paint scheme's not going to get him lost in the desert, is it?
That's a bit glary, isn't it? I think you need sunglasses looking at that all day.
Well, Siriol in one of the big Suzuki 800 DRZs, one of the big single-cylinder bikes in the event.
Dr. Big. Yes, it's a fearsome beast, to be honest with you. That's a very big piston just going boom, boom, boom.
And
Rocks.
the Kawasaki, represented there by Jean-Marie Benarot, picking his way across some boulders there. Another thing to catch you out if you're doing over 70 or 80 miles an hour on the stage.
Touch a boulder at that speed and it's a pinch puncture straight away. Here's another Dominator, Marcel Pilet. A peculiar riding style, but he's got a crash helmet painted like a ladybird, so whether that's going to help him or what, I don't know.
In actual fact, the Ladybird is Marcel Pilet's sponsor. So there you see a close-up of that Ladybird crash helmet. Marcel Pilet, 10th on today's special stage. But Bruno Sabi continuing his domination on the four-wheel category, fastest on today's stage. 1 minute 45 seconds faster than his nearest rival, and that rival was Ari Vatanen in the Citroën ZX Rally Raid. And now he is 1 hour clear at the head of the field.
9 days without any rest in between, these drivers must really be struggling.
Well, this day was known as the longest day, from Tamanrasset to Adrar, right down in the heart of Algeria, and the worst was to come with some mammoth sand dunes towards the end of the stage, just as the shadows start to go long. Tomorrow, the 10th day of the Paris-Dakar, a day of rest in Adrar. It will be well needed by most of the crews, also for the service crews to refettle the cars, which have already done some 2,000 miles and are really sorely in need of a service.
And you've got to bear a thought for the poor boys who haven't got service crews, and they'll be spending their day off fixing broken parts, refettling, trying to get some more life out of the old thing.
So it's flat out from the Hogar Mountains, then onto the plains of Oualan and on to the small oasis town of Adrar. Kenjiro Shinazuka locks a wheel up, brakes very hard for one of the washouts. It only rains very infrequently here in the desert, but when it does, you get these huge ruts forming. You've got to pick your way across them very carefully indeed. There you can see some of the washouts. One of the Mitsubishis changing course to avoid one of those big ditches, and up ahead of them, leaving the first of the dust clouds, one of the Citroën ZX Rally Raids. So as one of the Citroëns leading the two Mitsubishis across the sand, weaving and twisting, trying to stay out of one another's dust trails and watch out for those ditches.
They all almost seem to be playing follow the leader there.
Erwin Weber running at maximum speed, but a very big ditch there and a bad jump for him. And Ambrosino, no, it's Timo Salonen stopped in the Citroën ZX Rally Raid, waving for assistance, and this was the reason why.
We came into that rough place, maybe a little bit too fast, and he's back.
Co-driver Fred Gallagher, having impacted his back, waves away the camera. The man who now lives in Edinburgh, Fred Gallagher, suffering a compressed spine after a very heavy landing. And that meant the end of the rally for Timo Salonen as the medical crew arrived. Alan Ambrosino, the fast support Citroën ZX Rally Raid, carrying an additional tyre on the roof. He arrives to see if he can assist.
He's back in that jump, and he must go to hospital.
Well, Timo Salonen saying it all. He must go to hospital. He knows it means the end of his event. Ari Vatanen also arrived to see if there's anything he can do to help all the drivers, giving up time on the timed special stage, don't forget. And when it becomes obvious that Salonen is not going to be able to continue, they take on his spare wheels to be able to continue. A brave smile from Fred Gallagher. The good news is that Fred Gallagher is now back out of hospital, back at home in Edinburgh, resting that injured back. We look forward to seeing him back in action very shortly. But meanwhile, back on the road to Adrar, Ari Vatanen and Alan Ambrosino continue in formation. The fast support vehicle with a tyre on its roof before Vatanen decides to pull ahead. He has still time to make up on this special stage. Away from Ari Vatanen to Alain Ambrosino. The ZX Rally Raids separate. Vatanen forges ahead and heads on to a spectacular 7th place. There, the difference that the 200 kilos of weight in spare parts makes both the cars running absolutely flat out. And Ari Vatanen really on the limit, heading for that 7th place. Jérôme Rivière picking his way through a dust cloud from a truck up ahead. Rivière 62nd on the overall leaderboard after missing 2 of the controls. The Dutchman Cor Bisma heads along in his MAN truck. And again, the wide open spaces, the 2-wheel drive buggy. There we see Hiroshi Masuoka, also Sergio Chioni's vehicle coming up. There's Chioni in the Land Rover. He's actually the support vehicle for Vismara's Range Rover. There, Hiroshi Masuoka in the Mitsubishi Pajero, 13th overall, leading the T2 category for modified production vehicles. There are the 2 T2 Mitsubishi Pajeros, the second of the vehicles, currently running 3rd in the category, and that's Aki Siriwatanak, the Thai driver. And there we see some information on Siriwatanak. The full name, Aki Ponsoan Siriwatanak, from Lampang in Thailand. He's a tobacco farmer by profession. 1992 won the T2 category on the Paris-Cape Town rally. Also a very proficient rally driver and the rally champion in Thailand. Now heading on as one of the front-running T2 vehicles. Jean-Pierre Fontenay, one of the T3 prototype Mitsubishi Pajeros, now 56th overall after suffering transmission problems on the previous day. He gained 36 hours of time penalties but continues as the fast support vehicle for the Mitsubishi team. Now you can see why the extended aerial for the satellite navigation system there to clear that spare wheel, the additional spare wheel carried on the roof.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind satellite navigation, trying to find my way around this country, to be honest. My map reading not being what it is.
Well, certainly in the wide open space of the desert, absolutely vital. Giacomo Vismara, don't forget, driving solo. Vismara 10th overall, 1 hour 45 minutes behind the leaders on this particular special stage, following the Polini truck of Francesco Polini across this rocky desert.
Yeah, look out, Mr. Polini's coming. Everybody better get out of the way. Oh, he stopped.
Polini 9th overall, Vismara 10th overall, a quick stop and a conference en route. There you can see the empty load bed of the Polini truck, not much sign of cargo in there, just the big turbocharger for that Detroit diesel engine. And nightfall on Saturday 9th of January, the end of the longest day of the 1993 Paris-Dakar. The first time the rallies really visited this part of Algeria, a lot of the locals turning out to take a closer look at the machinery. And as darkness falls, they await the arrival of the rest of the field as that very long special stage makes for a very tough event. Some of the vehicles heading in to the overnight bivouac on the tarmac of the local airfield, tents put up for all the competitors, food provided, as Guy Deladrier, the Belgian driver, leading the T1 production category in the Nissan Terrano. He arrives 19th place overall. And the end of a very long day, a short period of rest, just 24 hours for the crews to refettle their vehicles before they set off again across the desert, this time up to the western border from Algeria to Mauritania and then on to Senegal and Dakar. So the action continues. Join us after the break. Welcome back to our review of the 1993 Paris-Dakar Rally Raid, day 10 of the event, the day of rest in Adra in Algeria, but 24 hours of frantic activity for the Citroën team, both in the repair of the cars and also behind the scenes, because Citroën are fighting to keep Pierre Latigue in the event. He's been excluded for allegedly being seen refueling on the timed special stage. Mark Waugh, the clerk of the course, saying, "I saw Lartigue and Salonen at a halt at a spot which looked like a petrol station. 300 litres of petrol in blue cans and nearby 2 cars which seem to be white Toyotas, but at 4 a.m. on Monday morning, the chief steward Roland Theron saying, considering we don't have all the facts, there's still a doubt regarding the refueling of the vehicle. So the stewards have therefore decided to reinstate Lartigue and let him continue in the rally." So a real moment of tension. Dejection, though, for Mark Waugh, whose judgment really has been called into question by the stewards of the event, but it's relief for a reinstated Pierre Lartigue. He said, "I feel all right, no problem at all for me. I know I did nothing wrong, but I don't know why the organisers did this. It's adding to my pressure, because you're going to see some really fast action today." So Lartigue reinstated. That leaves the halfway leaderboard looking like this. Bruno Sabi leading then at half distance, with Pierre Lartigue still in that second place. 1 hour, 38 minutes and 24 seconds behind him. Kenjiro Shinazuka in third in the Mitsubishi, Ube Oriol fourth, and Salvador Servia a fine fifth place with the Lada Samara. Erwin Weber fighting his way back up to sixth position. Ari Vatanen suffered tyre troubles, dropped down to 16th place, now back to 7th. Alan Ambrosino 8th, and the amazing Francesco Polini with that 12-ton truck in 9th place overall. Giacomo Vismara driving solo in 10th, the second Polini truck of Husa in 11th. Masuoka leading the T2 modified production category in 12th place ahead of his teammate Cyril Watanak. And then 2 more of the trucks, Bukhtiar and Versino in the Tatra and the Mercedes in 14th and 15th. These are the halfway classifications for the bikes, with Stefan Peterhansel leading Thierry Charbonnier by 1 hour, 1 minute and 41 seconds ahead of Xavi Riba. Jordi Arcarons fighting back after that 8-hour penalty for missing the control in 4th place. There, Clever Kohlberg, Jean Brucy, Augustin Fernandez, Andrea de Azevedo, despite his puncture, in 9th place, and the Italian Massimo Montebelli in 10th. The Gilera of Marmiroli in 11th, ahead of Patrick Suriol on the single-cylinder Suzuki in 12th. Pierrick Leblanc, Pierre Briet, and Marcel Pilet completing the top 15. Day 11, though, another long stage, 626 kilometres of timed special stage, the last full stage in Algeria before heading across the border into Mauritania. This is Massimo Marmiroli on the Italian Gilera, 11th overall and flat out for the first 200 kilometres.
Yeah, you can see at the back of that bike, it kind of flares out behind his legs. That's additional fuel capacity he's carrying. It's quite a nice track they're going down, whipping past another competitor. This is Augustin Fernandez. He's on a DR650. Looks like he's going as fast as he can. He's about to lose his rucksack, though. Come on, boy, shape yourself up.
Well, Augustin Fernandez, another of the privateers, but being very rapidly overhauled here is Stefan Peterhansel, the rally leader, and Thierry Charbonnier holding on to that second place overall, but still 1 hour 25 minutes ahead of him. It's this man, Stefan Peterhansel.
Yep, undoubtedly the leader. He's got an hour on hand on everybody else. He's going to relax, take it easy, doesn't need to press too hard. With a cushion like that, this event's virtually over.
Well, Peterhansel, a very broad, talented man, a former skateboard champion. Now he and his wife, in addition to rally raiding, run a baby wear shop near Paris. But problems for Thierry Charbonnier, having to program in the waypoints into his satellite navigation system mounted on the handlebars of the bike. The navigation system keeps losing the designates he's putting in there. That is meaning he's having to rely totally on that book. And you can see there, it basically said 625 kilometres, straight line.
Does that mean the satellite's gone missing, or he's missing?
It's an electrical problem on the satellite nav system, but this is Ari Vatanen, the special stage winner today, 7th place overall, and tyre problems dropped him back down to 18th place at El Galia 3 days ago. Now he's definitely on a fight back.
Flying through the sand is Citroën. The suspension is just fantastic. You look at the way it's handling these sand dunes. The wheels hardly leave the ground. And look out, Stefan. No. Now there's a difference in power for you.
Yes, 300 brake horsepower in the Citroën ZX Rally Raids, a slightly larger engine for this year's event, up to a full 2 litres capacity with a big turbocharger on the back as well. combined with, what, 100 brake horsepower of the Yamaha 850. But these cars really setting the pace on this very fast special stage.
It's a bit unfair. All his four wheels are driving.
But the second fastest man on this special stage was the Mitsubishi Pajero of Erwin Weber. 2 minutes 45 seconds, the difference between his and Vatanen's total over that very long 626 kilometre special stage. Again, the Mitsubishi Pajero demonstrating that very long, very resilient suspension travel. Pajero also having an advantage over the Citroëns because it's got much shorter overhangs at front and rear. It's purpose designed to be able to get a little bit out of shape on some of those jumps and be able to catch, something which can be a problem in the softer sand for the Citroëns. They tend to dig their noses into the sand. Hubert Auriol setting his tracks across the desert, the two fine clouds of almost flowery white dust. Hubert Auriol third today, moving up into third overall. And Pierre Latigue, he pacing himself too. But this is Auriol driving smoothly and rapidly as ever.
On those overhead shots, they look like rockets on fireworks night, just leaving a trail of dust as they fly into the horizon.
So Hubert Auriol moving up the leaderboard, taking the third place, and just look at the size of those sand dunes. Pierre Latigue, fourth on this special stage. He holds on to that strong second place despite his overnight scare. But now that is behind him. He's heading on, heading for the checkpoint and also to Adrar, well, from Adrar to Chenachen, close to the border with Mauritania. And there, the distinctive sand dunes in the background as the cars arrive at Fort Saint-Marie, another of the old French Foreign Legion outposts, unused now for almost half a century, but still in use today as a route checkpoint. It must have been a very isolated location when you were posted here up on the Algerian border, but now the place is reverting to the desert. The peace and the sound of the wind only being displaced by the sound of the cars on this one day. And this on full power at over 120 miles an hour is the rally leader Bruno Sabi, fifth on this special stage, now 1 hour 36 minutes ahead of Pierre Latigue in the overall reckoning, but in a little bit of a trouble, driving with his left hand strapped up. Bruno Sabi hit a rock on last year's Paris-Beijing raid. The steering wheel snapped round and strained his wrist very badly. And today, Bruno Sabi suffering from a similar degree of pain and having to have a wrist support on his arm to withstand the pounding of the track. Well, heading off across the desert as we see Salvador Servia heading for 6th place on this special stage, 6th place overall. And thanks to his co-driver, Jamie Puge, we get the inside story on how Servia keeps up his concentration on the long stages.
Oh my word.
Well, there you see the record of the singing Servia, the Spanish rally champion, third in the European Rally Championship in the 80s, a very competent rally driver. Then began rally raiding first with the Range Rovers, now with this amazing mid-engined Lada Samara powered by a Porsche engine, prepared by the Eureka racing team in France. The same team have prepared Formula 3000 and sports racing cars in the past, and certainly capable of matching the pace of the factory-prepared Mitsubishis and Citroëns. Jean-Pierre Fontenay, 7th on this special stage, 13th overall, fighting back. Don't forget, 4 days ago, he damaged the front transmission of his Pajero, lost over 16 hours in time penalties, but continues and is back up into the top 10. So Fontenay with his eyes very firmly on those top 10 positions. And the leading two-wheel drive car still Jean-Louis Schlesser, the former twice world sports car champion, in the rear-wheel drive Renault turbo-powered buggy. 8th on the stage, 12th overall. Cutting through the dust from the helicopter's wash. And Jean-Louis Schlesser demonstrates the sheer straight-line performance of that Renault Alpine buggy.
That is a very fast motor car.
And again, the scenery dwarfing the machinery. The car just a tiny speck. The dust trail behind it, though, stretching for over half a mile.
Is it true that the Singing Spaniard's now appearing in pantomime?
I think there's more than enough pantomime going on in that Lada Samara, but meanwhile Alan Ambrosino sprouts another tyre on his roof rack, heading for 9th on this stage, 8th overall, but problems for Kenjiro Shinazuka. Under the car, Henri Magna, his co-driver, trying to remove the sump protection to repair a jammed clutch mechanism. The clutch is slipping, and it means that Ken Shinazuka was forced to complete the stage on half throttle, really the end of his hopes for a top 3 finish. The cause of the problem, oil leaking from a gearbox oil cooler into the clutch mechanism, and that slipping clutch meant disappointment for Shinazuka. Pajero, though, continuing on. One of the organisers' helicopters getting into very close proximity.
I mean, that pilot's just showing off, isn't he?
But again, note that the pilot, he's keeping the helicopter just slightly behind the Pajero so he doesn't blind the driver with the prop wash kicking up the dust. Close formation flying, and how about this for formation flying? The Polini doing over 110 miles an hour, that monster V8 truck overtaking the helicopter on its way to 9th place overall.
The pilot's looking suitably astonished. That is an awesome machine. I think it's the only word in the dictionary we can really sum up that Italian truck.
Built as a fast response vehicle for airport firefighting, the Polini trucks sold all over the world. These are the two Polinis, Jacques Hussard in number 501, Francesco Polini in number 500, and pressing on very hard indeed. A V8 engine, four-wheel drive, four-wheel steer. 100 miles an hour heading towards the final overnight halt in Algeria at the oasis of Chenachen. Today's route of day 12 takes the competitors across the border into Mauritania. There the route having looped down right to the southernmost point in Algeria, then back up to the border with Mauritania, and day 12's stage 650 kilometers from Chenachen to Bir Amran. No liaison at all from a 7:30 a.m. start. It's a flat-out 650-kilometre run, and another very early start for the crews. Breakfast on the airfield at Chenachen. The organisers of the Food Africa tours flying in two special flying canteens to cater for the competitors. And as daylight comes up, number 5, Marcel Pilet, is heading for the start.
Yes, the man with the ladybird on his head, full stomach. These riders have got to be careful, actually. They don't want to have too much to eat. This is Clever Kohlberg, just checking his route map, making sure he knows where he's going. And the back wheel, looking suitably fresh. And off they go into the desert for another 600 kilometers of bar-bashing fun, I think we could call it. Yes, your clutch works, sir. A spare pair of shoes in his fanny pack, as they're called.
Well, the bikes depart, they head away. Bruno Sabi looking relaxed, the overnight leader, heading for the stage start. This is Pierre Latigue, second place at the moment. Wets the palms of his gloves, that helps him get some grip on the steering wheel. And Sabi, Oriol, Ken Shinazuka. All the leading competitors heading away there. Shinazuka easing that clutch in, hoping for no repetition of the problems of the slipping clutch from the previous day. The Mitsubishi mechanics working through the night. Irvin Weber, Salvador Servia again with the glorious sounding Porsche engine larder, and the howl of the V8 as Vismara's Range Rover leaves. This is Pierre Latigue, still running in second place. But problems for Latigue on this special stage. No less than 3 punctures, 2 in the first 150 kilometers. That meant that he ran out of spare tyres and actually had to wait for Hubert Auriol to come along and swap spare wheels. Well, Hubert Auriol, despite stopping to help his teammate Latigue, still set 3rd fastest time on the stage. That secures his 3rd place overall. So now the rally really starting to take shape. And there you see Gilles Picard, Hubert Auriol, waving, saying we're trying to make up time, looking at his watch. So a relaxed atmosphere for Auriol and Picard. This, though, is the tense atmosphere for Kenjiro Shinazuka. Again, that slipping clutch bedeviling the Pajero's progress. The oil is leaking onto the clutch is slipping and getting hot, throwing fumes into the car. This is going to mean big troubles in the rocky terrain, and it could mean Mitsubishi's weak point. Still 4th overall, though, for Shinazuka. The Ford forming a passage control yet again, meaning that he can have some respite, let that overheated clutch cool down. But drama up and down the field. Ari Vatanen's attack being delayed as he stops to replace yet another tyre. 3 punctures today, still 5th on the stage, still 7th overall. Jean-Pierre Fontenay, the fast support vehicle, still fastest though on this stage, outpacing all his teammates, 11 minutes and 10 seconds faster than Bruno Sabi. We've got more action coming up, including those amazing heavyweight trucks. Join us after the break. Welcome back to our review of the 1993 Paris-Dakar raid. And Jean-Louis Schlesser, driving solo in that Renault Alpine buggy, makes his preparations for day 13, a 522-kilometre special stage from Bir Amran to Attar. Just across the border now into Mauritania, very basic overnight accommodation. Bir Amran basically means 4 wells, and that's literally all there is. A watering point for the camels and the goats. Normally, it's almost deserted. Now, having crossed the border into Mauritania, this is the section to the edge of the Attar Mountains, through sand dunes, soft sand and desert, a final liaison section into the town of Attar. 610 kilometers in all, and the fastest man on the stage on day 13, Jordi Arkerons. Now, don't forget, he had 8 hours of penalties after the very first special stage for missing one of those passage controls. He has now fought back, taking this, his 5th successive stage win, to become 4th overall. An amazing performance.
Makes you wonder what would have happened if he hadn't lost those 8 hours. This is Thierry Charbonnet. Sounds like he's got the baffle going in that exhaust as well, and the sand's getting softer on this stage.
And of course that sand really sapping the power of the cars and the bikes. It sucks you down, it slows you down, it makes it very difficult indeed to maintain forward momentum, and when you get into the dunes, that really does become a battle with the machine.
And this is where the dunes start by the looks of it. That previous shot, I mean, your route was lined up for you, stuck between those 2 walls of rock. And this is soft sand. This is where you've got to keep it going all the time. Can't back off for a second. You're looking a good 20, 30 meters in front of you. Stefan Peter-Hansel getting a helping hand from some fellow competitors and filling them in for their trouble. This is Peter-Hansel again. He's got to watch those rocks. I understand he's running mooses, so he's not particularly bothered about punctures, unlike some of the riders down in the field. Peter-Hansel again.
You mentioned mooses there. What exactly is a moose?
A moose is it's a solid rubber insert instead of an inner tube, so you can't puncture them. This is Patrick Sion. Oh, keep it going, boy, keep it going. Come on. That's it. Bit more on the clutch. Get your feet on the pegs, get your balance again, and away. That was a lucky escape. This is Rebus, our Spanish. Ooh, big front wheel land. Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't any sweat, my man. I'm sure it wasn't. I think that would have made me stop and take my breath for a couple of minutes, actually.
Well, despite that, Xavier Rebus still fourth on this stage and running third in the overall reckoning behind Stefan Peter-Hansel and Thierry Charbonnier. But for Pierrick Leblanc, the sand dunes about to claim another victim.
I mean, he's doing okay here. Hits the rocks, gets a bit out of shape. Oh my, I mean, it's like running into mud. People say sand, it's like liquid.
But again now, the exertion of having to try and lift the bike back up. You were saying how much fuel these bikes are carrying.
This is quite early in the stage, so they won't have lost a lot of fuel by now. Just got to get it going again. Oh, he has the luxury of electric start. I think after this long in a raid, the extra weight is worth it, rather than having to kick and kick and kick to get it going.
Well, Pierre Leblanc eventually gets going. He's still running in the marathon class for bikes without outside assistance, now running 13th place, 22 hours and 5 minutes behind the leader.
And these boys are like snails, they've got everything they need. Oh, Pierre Bray, that's a 660 Yamaha big single. And just front wheel fell into a hole.
Brie also continuing at the tail end of the 15 remaining bikes, just 15 bikes left now. But this is literally a little bit of a battle through the desert between Erwin Weber, fastest on this special stage, heading for 5th place overall, overtaking Hubert Auriol, 3rd on the stage, 3rd place overall, but he was set for incident on his arrival in Attar.
It must be hard for these drivers. They're so ingrained into racing to let somebody go, realise they've just got to keep it at a certain speed. They must want to race them so badly.
Erwin Weber setting the pace on this stage. No gearbox or troubles today. Again, the Mitsubishi mechanics having worked overnight to replace the gearboxes of each of the Pajeros to ensure that the cars were fit for this daunting stage through the sand dunes. Ari Vatanen 9th on the stage, still running in 7th place overall, aiming to get up the leaderboard, but problems ahead for Vatanen too, as he headed for Attar. Vatanen again setting the pace across the wide open spaces. 4 times Paris-Dakar Rally Raid winner. And again, that crisp exhaust note from the turbocharged Citroën engine. It's mounted behind the crew. And there, the first of the big barriers, the big sand dunes. Cars starting to tackle them. Salvador Servia, the singing Spaniard in the Lada Samara.
Cars are exactly the same as bikes in this sand. You've just got to keep the speed up, keep the momentum up, and try and float your way over. If you slow down, you sink, you don't go anywhere.
And problems for Pierre Latigue. He has slowed down, he has sunk. Now he's using a special high lift jack to lift the car some 2.5 feet in order to put the sand ladders underneath. This is just within the first 50 miles of the start, and it loses Pierre Latigue 20 hard-earned minutes. Hubert Auriol arriving to see if he can lend some form of assistance, and really it was a case of team tactics going wrong. Citroën had gambled on taking a straighter route across the sand dunes, but they paid the penalty here in the soft sand.
They've got to be careful not to dehydrate themselves with physical exertion like this, running around in no-mech suits and things. They must be roasting.
The back-breaking work of trying to scoop out the sand from underneath the body of the car to try and give some ground clearance. Then it's a case of a bit of muscle power and a lot of pushing to try and get the car up and get its momentum, get it floating on the sand again. And using all of that 300 brake horsepower, Pierre Latigue gets going again. Well, Mitsubishi had decided not to take the direct route through the sand dunes. They took the route round the edge of the Attar Plateau. Perhaps the best decision, Mitsubishi choosing that slower, rockier route, but still a very hard route. Kenjiro Shinozuka second fastest on the stage, 4th overall, but found the stage very physical because of the kickback of the steering over the camel grass and the rocks. Ari Vatanen still charging hard in the Citroën. The Mitsubishi's approaching us head-on, running in convoy across the desert. This vast, wide open expanse, almost uninhabited, but even so, they have to watch out for some of the local livestock.
You can guarantee they've never seen a car like that before.
But 429 kilometers into the stage, the passage control of Ouadan, very remote town high on a plateau. And again, the Mitsubishis and the Citroëns playing hare and tortoise through the desert. Citroëns now taking the lead, the Mitsubishis swallowing the dust as the cars weave and twist, taking alternative routes across the sand dunes. There, some of those huge sand dunes, deceptive drops. You can't see how deep that sand dune is until you get to the very edge.
And when you're committed to a drop like that, that's it, you're going. You can't do anything about it, just keep it straight.
And again, Grand Prix dicing in the desert. One of those huge sand dunes being the downfall for Ari Vatanen and Christian Delferrier. Literally, their Citroën ZX Rally Raid plummeted off the edge of one of those dunes, fell some 30 feet, and the impact of landing injured the spines of both Delferrier and Vatanen. So the cars arrive at Attar at the end of the stage, and it really was a dramatic close to the day's action, particularly in the Citroën camp, because in addition to Vatanen and Delferrier's injury, there was also drama surrounding the third-place car of Hubert Auriol. An accident with a local taxi in the town meant a cut brow and a hurt left wrist for Hubert Auriol. But agony also is written all over Ari Vatanen's face. Vatanen and Delferrier limped into the stage finish in absolute agony after injuring their backs in that fall. Both crew taken to the medical centre for checks, were able to continue the next day as Francesco Polini heads into Attar providing the heavyweight action. The monster truck again demonstrating its agility with a four-wheel drive and four-wheel steer. Watch the suspension working hard, then the rear-wheel steer taking over to keep it smooth as he heads away from the sand dune. Closing in on Gérard Bourgoin, the buggy for which the Polini trucks are ostensibly providing support. But this was the luckiest escape of the rally. Dominic Huzio's Mitsubishi Pajero. He and Jean-Luc Lerian, his co-driver, escaped after the vehicle somersaulted 5 times, then exploded into flames. This now, though, is dawn on day 14 and the 9th special stage, a 272-kilometre loop high into the Rocky Mountains of the Attar Plateau, and then returning to the town, the small town in the heart of the Islamic Republic of Mauritania. And a real surprise result, the 2 Italian bikers, Massimo Montebelli and Massimo Marmiroli, taking the honours first and second on the stage as the leading Yamahas followed a riverbed the wrong way and lost time.
Well, you can call this Team Massimo, I think. These 2 Italian boys are apparently friends. They've kept each other company, kept watch over each other. And with Yamaha going the wrong way, with Stefan Peter Hansel here, who's a victim of that wrong direction, he lost more time, then really got on the gas to catch up, and eventually made it up to 8th on the stage, and we see him here whipping past one of the privateers.
In actual fact, that's Thierry Charbonnier he's overtaking, such was his pace.
Now that's quite startling. Here they are, more trials riding than desert raiding. Got to be very careful in this. You don't want one of these bikes to fall over and trap you under its considerable weight.
And again, picking his way very carefully up with the exhaust note resounding off the rock walls. That's Hubert Auriol. He was fastest on this special stage.
We can comment on the acoustics, but I shouldn't think it bothered him too much.
Auriol now third place overall, just 37 seconds behind this man, Pierre Latigue. And Latigue today really setting this alight, despite this anxious moment on one of the hairpins.
It's like the Stelvio Pass in Italy, isn't it?
Pierre Latigue, literally a cross between one of the Alpine passes in Italy and Pikes Peak hill climb, setting the second fastest time on the stage, taking 1 minute and 43 seconds off this man, the rally leader, Bruno Sabi. Sabi, a cautious third on the special stage, now feeling the pressure of being the rally leader, entering the final stages of the Paris-Dakar. Very cautious all the way, but still the overall rally leader by 1 hour, 39 minutes and 5 seconds. More problems though for Ari Vatanen, stuck in the sand, and both he and Christian Delferrier still in considerable pain from their back injuries. There you can see Delferrier wearing a substantial back brace to try and support his injured spine. They were stuck in sand 3 times, but the support crew of Alan Ambrosino and Alan Gayanek spent their whole time helping support Ari Vatanen, dig him out, so Vatanen didn't have to climb out of the car. But a sign of Vatanen's pace, allowing Gerard Bergon's buggy to overtake him, but still 17th on the stage and 8th overall. But more problems for Jean-Louis Schlesser, trying to find somewhere to change a damaged front wheel and tyre, and his punctures dropped him to 9th on the stage, 15th overall.
Now, to cause an impact, that would have been an awful impact, to cause a dent in a rim like that.
Well, here's an ideal example of just how rough this terrain is, as Etienne Smrlevic's Mitsubishi PX33 jolts and bounces its way across a lunar landscape.
And a cameraman following him pretty closely.
Well, Smrlevic still running in 26th place, so it's back to the town of Attar for a second night in the bivouac on the tarmac of the local airport. The local life going on unhindered, but tomorrow the final sting in the tail for the competitor, the 456-kilometre special stage to Nouakchott, the capital of Mauritania. Join us after the break. A sore Ari Vatanen as we welcome you back to the final part of our review of the 1993 Paris-Dakar Rally Raid. This is day 15 of the 16-day event. The final sting in the tail, a 456-kilometre special stage from Attar to Nouakchott and the Atlantic coast, the capital of Mauritania. A very early start, a 5:30 a.m. breakfast for Ari Vatanen, Ubail Auriol, Delferrier, Pierre Latigue and Stefan Pederhansel. Bruno Sabi, the pressure of being rally leader now for almost 3/4 of the event must be on his shoulders as he heads out to climb in the Mitsubishi Pajero. He knows he has just 2 more days left. As the bikers head into the darkness, we take a look at the route so far from Morocco into Algeria, then down the full length of Mauritania to Nouakchott, and the first time the crews will see the sea since they left the Mediterranean. Short liaison section at each end of another awesome timed special stage, and very tough conditions, blowing fine sand and very soft sand for the start, and a rolling start for the rally leader, Stefan Pederhansel.
And that is soft sand. I mean, he's having to push just to get away. Looking questioningly at the cameras, it's like, what am I doing? And off they go. Pederhansel on his way now. He's got to really pay attention to what he's doing. He can't let his concentration slip for a second, and those are hideous dunes.
The rest of the bikes now setting off in pursuit. Jordi Arcarons and Thierry Charbonnier again riding shotgun for Pederhansel, and the big single-cylinder Suzuki of Patrick Siriol thunders on its way.
And here they are, playing Follow Me, Follow You. I think these are the Yamaha homeboys. So we've got Charbonnier, Pederhansel and Arcarons all shadowing each other, making sure they don't come to any mishaps.
But this soft sand, very tricky indeed. Just one moment can actually throw you over the bars and out of the reckoning. This sand very soft indeed, and they're really paying the penalty of it. It was Thierry Charbonnier.
And he buried that totally. I mean, that's gone. The whole front wheel disappeared.
And a sign of the teamwork here, Stefan Pederhansel doing a U-turn and heading back to assist Charbonnier. Now don't forget, Stefan Pederhansel now has a 1 hour 30-minute lead over his opposition. He knows he can come back and assist the man who's in second place, Charbonnier, without incurring too many penalties. And in fact, Jordi Arcaron's also falling there as well and coming across to assist Charbonnier. Now it's Charbonnier's turn to help dig Arcaron's out, so it really is a case of all three Yamaha riders assisting one another.
Yeah, these boys are taking care of business for the Yamaha Corporation, and I hope they'll be handsomely rewarded as well at the end of the day.
Well, amazingly, despite that delay, these were still the three fastest bikes on the stage.
That is quite incredible. This is Arcaron's again. I think he's just keeping an eye on the two of them. They'll shepherd themselves together and off they'll go again. And they're leaving Pederhansel to take the lead. That's good of them.
But more problems though for Xavi Riba, the K2 850 sidelined at the edge of the track, and the soul-destroying news was that Xavi Riba, just 2 days from the end of the event, whilst in third place, was forced to retire with engine failure.
You can tell when a biker's really in trouble. He takes his helmet off and your head gets cold. It's almost a kind of way of admitting defeat.
Well, Hubert Auriol fastest on this penultimate special stage, his second successive stage victory, 1 minute and 20 seconds faster than his teammate Pierre Latigue. Still in third place overall, 4 hours, 2 minutes and 59 seconds behind Bruno Sabi now, and still in pain from his injured left hand after clipping that taxi in the town of Attar.
I reckon it's that taxi that pinched the wheel, isn't he? He's showing off again.
But the Citroën restored to its full health, looking immaculate once again as he heads through to attack those sand dunes.
Carrying extra body parts, I mean, the organisation that runs these teams and the pre-planning is just fantastic. Quite a unique event.
Well, charging hard as ever, the sand ladders strapped to the rear end of the car throws it over some of the short, sharp dunes. Again, the difficulty is when you crest one of those dunes, you don't know whether it's a 5-foot drop or a 50-foot drop on the other side.
And also the fact you grind yourself out, you end up seesawing madly trying to get yourself off it again.
A compromise between speed and aggression and caution and keeping the car in one piece, not flying off the edge of the dunes as some of the drivers have done on this event. And the African Hubert Auriol, bred and brought up in Africa, is really at one with the desert, although it doesn't stop him taking the odd shortcut around the thorn bushes.
Whoa, a bit close to our cameraman then as well.
Pierre Latigue, well, despite 2 punctures and being stuck in sand for over half an hour on this stage, he was still second fastest, and that reinforces his position second overall.
I love the way he's just clipping those little dunes there, keeping it on the hard pack, keeping the power down, speed up.
The dunes now smaller, shaped by the wind from the Atlantic, the Barken dunes as they call them. They actually move around with the wind. Where they are one day, if you go to them again, they move somewhere else the next. But this is Erwin Weber, third on the special stage, now in a strong 4th place overall as he enters one of the oases. The terrain now becoming greener. Mauritania, one of the most picturesque African countries, picking his way through the narrow tracks of a village. Erwin Weber, co-drivers working hard. Manfred Hiemer directing him up the right track. Normally the Paris-Dakar actually avoids passing through villages, but in this particular case, through this dense band of palm trees, this is the only route. Well, Bruno Sabi, front-end damage after nosediving off a sand dune. 4th today, though, a nerve-wracking day for Sabi. Front transmission problems, then the front-end damage, but he still leads the rally by 1 hour, 13 minutes and 2 seconds. But obviously still a very nervous Bruno Sabi. Look at him waving at the helicopter, telling it to get away. That is how much pressure is on Sabi. There again, we see that amazing Barkan Dunes sandscape, and picking his way through it with the helicopter in attendance, the rally leader.
That's like nothing I've ever seen before. What incredible landscape.
Well, Ken Shinozuka, he had a troubled day, 5th overall, but the first piece of vegetation in the desert, and Shinozuka hit it.
Hello, let's look where we're going.
Well, Shinozuka paying the price, diving down into a gully. That was over half an hour of digging for him. Stefan Pederhansel, trekking across the desert, takes a look at the helicopter, and coming up fast behind him is Bruno Sabi, the two rally leaders together. But a big fright for Bruno Sabi, going the wrong way in the village. Suddenly he meets a Citroën head-on. An almost nightmare day for Sabi, but unbelievably he made it to the finish, to Nouakchott, the capital of Mauritania. There's only been a town here for 32 years, built in the 60s to be the capital of the new Muslim state when Mauritania gained its independence. But the Atlantic coast at last, after over 5,000 miles across the desert from the Mediterranean, and the finish is almost in sight. And this is the start of the 16th day, the final stage, from St. Louis on the border with Senegal to Dakar, Senegal's capital, and the rally's end. And already off the line, it's Stefan Pederhansel and Thierry Charbonnier heading the field.
And here we go, it's almost like motocross. I'm surprised they're actually going for it so hard. I would have thought they'd actually want to finish in one piece. There's a good block pass on one of the other Yamahas up there, and that previous corner by Pederhansel took him right out of the game.
And very spectacular through the dunes. Stefan Pederhansel determined to set the fastest time on the stage despite being the rally leader, and it very nearly caught him out.
Ooh, big off. Oh, my word. I mean, he was getting it on. I don't know why he did that.
Well, just 15 miles from rally end, and a limping Pederhansel does make it to the finish. But almost 15 miles from the end of a 5,500 mile epic, Stefan Pederhansel very nearly threw it away. A very anxious moment, but Pederhansel makes it to the finish, takes the hat-trick. He won the Paris to Cape Town, he won the Paris-Beijing. Now, with the battered and damaged and seatless Yamaha 850, Stefan Pederhansel wins the 1993 Paris-Dakar Raid. There you can see the damage to the bike's fairing, but the champagne is sprayed as we take a look at the special stage winners for the bikes, with Jean Brucy winning the prologue stage, then Pederhansel winning the first two, then Jordi Arkerons fighting back from that penalty, taking the 4th and the 5th special stages, then the 6th, 7th and 8th, as well as the 10th special stage. Arkerons, an amazing total. Stefan Pederhansel, despite his fall, taking that final stage. He'll be heading for the victory. And there we see the overall classification. Yamaha 1-2-3 with Pederhansel 1 hour 22 minutes ahead of Charbonnier. Arkerons fighting back to 3rd, then Benarot on the Kawasaki in 4th. And the privateers, including André de Azevedo from Brazil, completing that top 10. So Pederhansel crowned the bike winner, but now it's the turn of the cars and trucks to tackle the final stage and head for the finish. And onto the podium, the winner of the 1993 Paris-Dakar Raid, 1 hour 30 minutes and 5 seconds ahead of his closest opposition, Bruno Sabi and Dominique Serriès. But already charging along the beach, the man who was 3rd fastest on the final special stage, heading for fine 2nd place, the Citroën ZX Rally Raid, Pierre Latigue and Michel Perrin. Flat out on the final 60-kilometre stage along the beach, through the sand dunes and into Dakar itself. The Citroëns taking 2nd and 3rd places, and they arrive at the finish to the congratulations of the Citroën team manager, Guy Fréquelin. Mission almost accomplished for Pierre Latigue, the winner of the Paris-Beijing, forced into 2nd place. He shrugs his shoulders with resignation. And Hubert Auriol heads for that 3rd place with Gilles Picard in the co-driver's seat, 4 hours, 2 minutes and 8 seconds behind Bruno Sabi. The African Hubert Auriol takes the congratulations of Guy Fréquelin, waves to the crowd, but providing the spectacle on the final stage. Erwin Weber charging as ever, heading for 4th place overall, 6 hours, 14 minutes and 38 seconds behind Sabi. So 2 Citroëns, 2 Mitsubishis in that top 4, but the man who's fastest on the final special stage, the Mitsubishi fast support driver, now relieved of those 200 kilos of extra spare parts for the final stage, and having his just rewards, setting the fastest time, Jean-Pierre Fontenay. Ari Vatanen still in pain, but heading for 8th overall despite his back injuries, and Salvador Sermier and Jamie Puig in the Lada Samara, a fine 6th place overall. But one of the biggest cheers of the event to Francesco Polini with his co-driver Albiero Giorgio and Cloud Venante. They win the truck category, but there we see the stage winners for the cars and the trucks. Weber winning the first stage in Africa, then Sabi, then Vatanen on his big fight back before his back injuries. But Oriol fastest on the last stages, Fontenay on the very final one, but Bruno Sabi, the rally winner. There we see the overall classification, 1 hour, 9 minutes and 45 seconds separating Sabi from the rest. Then Pierre Lartigue and Hubert Oriol 2nd and 3rd, Irvin Weber 4th, Kenjiro Shinazuka making it 3 Mitsubishis in the top 5. Salvador Servia in the Lada Samara 6th ahead of Alan Ambrosino. Ari Vatanen, Giacomo Vismara, his solo drive taking him to 9th. Francesco Polini, an amazing 10th in the big monster truck. Ahead of Jacques Houssat, his teammate. Jean-Pierre Fontenay, Gilbert Vecino, Jean-Louis Schlesser, the best two-wheel drive vehicle, in 14th place. And Cyril Watanak winning the T2 production category. And of the 153 starters, 12 bikes, 28 trucks and 29 cars have made it to the finish. And despite all the dramas, no major injuries. And at last, a chance to celebrate.